The government of Kenya has set its sights on higher tax collections from micro enterprises with a new proposal to lower the turnover tax limit to 500,000 shillings in fresh efforts to capture more small traders. The threshold has been slashed from 1 million shillings to 500,000 shillings, while the upper limit has been reduced from 50 million shillings to 15 million shillings, pushing other small traders to pay the 30% taxes on profits or corporate tax. Turnover tax, or TOT as it is called, or sales rather, charged at 1% of small traders tax, including additional small traders in the bracket, is expected to encumber micro enterprises who have raised concerns about deteriorating business conditions with extra operating costs. Now, is this yet another smart move by the William Ruto administration to plug fiscal deficits, or an administrative misnomer that may further choke the informal sector? From Nairobi, Kenya, I have Professor Lekan Iraki, an economist and faculty, University of Nairobi, joining me. Thank you so much, Professor.
Hello, good afternoon.
Now, it's been said by so many people that what President William Ruto cannot tax does not exist. But then there are concerns because there's an urgent need to plug fiscal deficits, as it were. But then taking a look at it, what are those critical factors that you would say necessitated Kenya's drive in terms of revenue generation by the way of tax collection, most especially from small and medium enterprises?
Good afternoon. If you followed Kenyan politics last year as we went to the polls, everybody was complaining that Kenyans are too indebted, that the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta was taking too much debt. And President Ruto promised that if he becomes the president, he'll take care of that. And the best way to take care of that was to increase the taxes, because if you are the government and you don't want citizens to get money from debt, then the best alternative is to get taxes. And that is why the government is very aggressive in terms of collecting taxes, expanding the tax base so that as many Kenyans as possible pay taxes and lighten the tax burden. So this should not be a surprise. It was expected, and the Kenyans, I'm sorry to say, asked for it.
That's interesting for you to say. All right, now looking at this new tax proposal, we're seeing a slash from 1 million to 500,000 shillings. That is the lower limit, and from 50 million to 15 million shillings in the upper limit section. So what do you make of this? Do you think that the gaps in between these different variables or these different numbers, do you think it is healthy enough for what the government is trying to achieve?
The government has realized that 80% of the Kenyan economy is informal. It's not formal. And these people drive the economy. And if they drive the economy by creating jobs, by selling goods and services, then they could be a very good source of income. So what the government has tried is to bring down the threshold under which you can pay taxes so that more and more people are looped into the tax bracket. The problem with that is that people go to the informal sector because they can avoid paying taxes and other levies. So this is a double-edged sword, because some people might say, wait a minute, I went to this sector because I didn't want to pay taxes. Now I'm being told to pay taxes. So some of the businesses might close, but if the government makes tax modest, it's not very punitive, I see the government collecting some money from this sector, which is going to supplement money that the government gets from the formal sectors like big corporations and multinationals.
Now, how do you expect these small business owners to respond to this? Because some are saying or speculating that there's a possibility of multiple tax payments occurring here. Do you see them conforming or being defiant to what the Kenyan government is proposing?
I think most of the small businesses or small and micro enterprises are very reluctant to comply with the government directives, not because they are bad business people, but because the business is so small that a lot of them do not even keep records. So I think before they comply, they need to be registered. They need to get the tax system. They get a PIN number, and they need to be convinced and educated that paying taxes is good. But I can guarantee you that Kenya, like any other African country, has a problem of collecting taxes. But the best way to make people collect taxes is to make sure they see where those taxes go. So if the small businesses see where the tax is going, they are getting better services, better roads, power, water, their kids are going to school, they'll be more than eager to pay extra taxes. So let's see where the taxes go, a lot of people will be incentivized to pay the taxes.
So are you also now saying that more people will be captured into the tax regime, this new tax regime that we are seeing? And are you saying that this move by the Kenyan government is not being over ambitious? You're saying it's achievable if you were to put it in proper perspective?
I don't think the government is over ambitious. If you look at the contribution of the informal sector to the Kenyan economy, it's about 80% in terms of jobs created. So they should contribute the same to the tax revenues that is commensurate with their contribution to the economy. The problem is getting them into that tax bracket, making sure that they are registered, making sure that they file their taxes, and making sure that they get the benefits of those taxes. Because the feeling in Kenya and other African countries is that a lot of tax benefits go disproportionately to the big corporations, like the multinationals and so on. So if these small businesses start seeing the benefit, I think the government is not ambitious. It should be able to correct that money and even more.
Now you're saying that the government is not over-ambitious and there are tax benefits that could be accruable to the business environment and, of course, individuals. But then these micro enterprises over time have been complaining about issues of deteriorating business conditions. They've also talked about extra operating costs due to lack of infrastructure. They've also talked about socioeconomic instability in the country. And some of them are saying that it seems as though the government is putting the cart before the horse, because what the government should have done first is to create an enabling business environment for these businesses to thrive. Then you can introduce or amend the tax proposals in the tax regime to have a more robust tax revenue collection within the business ecosystem. So don't you think that's a bit of a misnomer?
That's an interesting question, because we can ask what comes first, the egg or the chicken? Because if the government improve the working environment, the small business will become bigger and pay more taxes. But the government needs money to do exactly that. So I think what the government has realized is that before I start improving the tax the tax regime, before I start improving the business environment, I need some money. And that money can only come from the people who are doing business. Remember, the same people are saying, don't get money from debtors, don't borrow money. So the government is torn between where do I get money from debt or from tax? And the government has decided, let's get money from tax. After we get money from tax, we can improve the business environment so that these businesses can expand, they can probably become future multinationals, and the government and the economy will start growing. So I agree with you, it is putting the cart before the horse, but for now, that means to be the only viable alternative.
So how would the Kenyan government measure its success? What would be the indices or index by which the government will measure this new tax policies coming on board? What are the benchmarks to guarantee that there will be appreciable progress in terms of what is generated in terms of tax revenue and the dividends of governments to the people?
The traditional benchmark is how much revenue have you collected. So the government will be telling us at the end of the year, we set this target, whether they will tell us whether they have achieved that percent, 90%, whatever percentage. So traditionally, the Kenyan Revenue Authority, which collects tax on behalf of the government, has targets, and they always give us what percentage of their target they have achieved. So I'm sure the traditional target of how much they have collected against the target is what they are going to use.
All right, finally, Professor, it's not enough to just collect taxes from these businesses, these micro enterprises, as it were. One other area would have to do with how to support this business ecosystem to grow their businesses, to grow their revenue base, to grow their profits, so that as much as they grow, there will be more tax revenue collection coming to the coffers of government. So how do you think that the government can go about that, supporting them, not only collecting money, but also supporting them? You've talked about incentivizing the tax payments. Will there also be incentives for businesses in terms of growth and expansion?
I like the new finance bill 2023, and it talks about the penalties for not paying taxes, for not declaring the total tax liability. It doesn't talk very much about incentives, and I think that is one area where we need to improve. If you want somebody to do something for you, you use the carrot and the stick. But I think if I look at the bill, the government seems to have used more of a stick. So we need to have more incentives so that people are incentivized to pay taxes. Maybe they are given some tax rebates if they pay tax consistently. But the best incentive for taxpayers would be to see where the services are going, so that we have better services in terms of water, in terms of power, in terms of roads, in terms of security, so that people feel good and expand their businesses. If possible, even build the borders so that we have more jobs being created and people feel good about themselves and their economy. So the best incentives, in my opinion, is to put those taxes into the best use, even more than tax rebates or anything else.
All right, sorry, Professor, just one more thing. Now that we're looking at, now that we're seeing that the government is focusing on small and medium enterprises, does that now mean that corporate establishments that have huge revenue base, those big multinational companies, does that mean that they are already fulfilling their obligation in terms of tax payment to government? Because it seems as though there's not much consideration from government towards this set of business.
And the big corporations, the multinationals that are domiciled in Kenya, have been paying their tax obligations. But there has been a few cases in court where people are saying that they have either declared or they have not paid their due taxes. I've seen a few cases going to court. But remember, these big corporations are well registered. They are known. We know the business they do. So it's very easy for them to pay taxes. And the conversation around is, if these big corporations can pay taxes and get the government services, then anybody else, including micro enterprises, should also pay the taxes. And the argument has been, if we all pay taxes, the burden will be lighter. We can even reduce the tax rate so that we pay lower tax rates and everybody benefits. So let's share the burden, but the question is how we are going to do it without hurting the economy, without slowing down the economy, and without the citizens feeling that they are being overburdened by taxes.
All right, thank you so much, Professor. It's all about balancing what is being paid and what dividends comes to the people and these business environments. But then we appreciate your presence on the show. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you and have a good afternoon.
And you too. Now, micro and small-sized businesses remain the backbone of the Kenyan economy and the largest contributor of new jobs, despite largely operating in informal settings. But these small traders have suffered from modest economic activities that has cut cash flow and hit business sales. Only time will tell if this turnover tax initiative would be a win-win situation for the government and the small and medium enterprises. And that's all on Business Edge for today. Do not forget that you can visit our social media handles at News Central TV. You can download our mobile app on App Store and Play Store and visit our website www.newscentral.africa with juicy information that we have for you there. My name is Lekan Onabanjo. Do not forget that at the top of the hour, we will be bringing you the news, so you don't want to miss it. So do enjoy the rest of your day.